What, buddy? You give up on your Switch already? Not today. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Well, because it's connected to my phone. What? That's Bologna. What? Giant walls? Circle walls? Certain walls? I don't know what that means. Can you do what with certain walls? Walk through walls? Oh, that I was playing before? Okay, Osiris. Yeah, that's a troll. Yep, he's a warrior. He'd be a right laner. He's on the right on the second row. Far right on the second row. Yep. Solo laner, yep.
Ahoy! At the moment, there are tons and tons of min-maxing guides for New World coming out, in many ways, and a lot of them focus on the early leveling and early crafting experience. Now, I'm somebody who likes to do things efficiently, but I also like to still have fun while doing it. So today I'd like to suggest ways in which you can have an efficient but still balanced leveling experience. You can still have fun along the way, you can experience all different types of aspects of the game while still not falling behind the curve. First, let's roll the intro. Now, let me be clear here. This is not meant to be a shot at the people making these guides at all. That would be highly hypocritical of me. I think those guides are great and they absolutely serve a purpose for every min-maxer that wants to use them. And in fact, I have made one of them specifically for engineering that I thought was very useful. But I don't think everyone wants to play that way, and that's a good thing, because otherwise we'd be running out of resources very quickly because everyone would be crafting the same things. But then, how does that not make the whole premise of this video contradictory? Well, let me explain it with some examples. I could tell you that in order to most efficiently level in early game, you will need 16 rawhide, 40 stone and 45 wood before you get into the first starting town, and you need to get 6 petal cap and 6 river crisps immediately in order to craft 3 corruption tinctures, and also level your mining enough to get some silver, because you will need all of these things at some point of the main quest. That's accurate information, that's actually what you need to do. But here's the kicker. You could also achieve all of these things by just exploring the game a little bit. What I did during the last beta is I decided that I'm just gonna gather a little bit of everything. I started a little bit late anyways because I was asleep when the servers opened up, so I figured, okay, I'm just gonna take it a little bit slower and just gather just a little bit of everything so that I can make sure that all my crafting levels are up to par. What happened? I had sufficient resources of everything by the time I hit the first town, and I had way too many petal caps and river crests by the time I actually got to that quest. And silver I also had plenty of. So effectively, all the things I needed I got along the way because I played the game in the way that the designers basically intended to be played, or think that people would play it. Now, not everyone will play it that way. For example, some people simply don't like gathering. In that case, you can always buy the resources, but of course they come with a pretty hefty price tag in the beginning. Now, let's talk about fun and efficient leveling, and then I'll mention some pitfalls in between as well. First of all, when you get into an area where you want to level, you should of course pick up the quests in the main town or in the main area for that. You won't always finish all of them, sometimes some just don't end up being necessary and you maybe out-level them before you do, but you still want to pick them up to begin with. Often these quests can unlock high-level quests in the same area, sometimes even give you dungeon keys, etc. So you want to make sure that you at least have the opportunity to do that initially. Along with that, as soon as you're able to, I would recommend picking a faction. That's because you get the PvE and PvP quests from the faction, which can often lead you to the same areas as some other quests do anyways. To get those quests, just look for the guy with your faction tag on the map. And also, in addition to that, you want to have a look at the town board. You will find even more quests. Often these are gathering quests, but some of them also require certain PvE goals. The problem with these town quests is that, especially in the beginning, they can often end up being low level, too low level for you even, so you have to decide if it's worth doing. When you've picked up the quests, before you leave town, consider if you want to flag for PvP. PvP flagging provides you with additional experience. As of the time of making this video, it's 10%. And if you beat the opponents, you get additional XP, weapon mastery, as well as faction tokens. Having leveled both unflagged and flagged, I find the PvP experience a lot more fun, and I think it is rewarding, but it's obviously not for everyone. If you don't enjoy PvP, or you get too frustrated when you get ganked by multiple enemies, then maybe it's not for you. That's okay too. When you've picked up your quests, have a look at the map and find out which quests are generally in the same area. Often you'll be able to finish a ton of quests before you actually go back to town in a single run. You can also use the map to pin the quests that are in the same area by hovering over them and selecting that you want to pin them, so that you have a better overview on the side and unpin the quests that are currently not relevant for you. Now, while you're going through the quests, and especially while you're traveling to the quests, pay attention to your surroundings. One of the biggest complaints that new players have with New World is that there are very long walking times in between. This is, in my opinion, a very reasonable concern, but what you will notice when you level up and when you level your gathering is that it's actually intended to some degree. What happens when you level your gathering professions is that tracking for certain materials gets enabled. So you will start seeing things on the top on your radar that are around you. You'll start seeing resources that are around you. and you will find that on these travel path 2 quests, there are a lot of resources to be gathered. As such, just having your professions leveled a little bit so you get the basic gathering can make a massive difference for your travel routes and how much you get out of them. Usually when I do a larger quest run, I try to have my pockets mostly full of resources by the end of it. You get XP for gathering, and that includes almost every gathering thing that you can get in this game. You get it for mining rocks, you get it for chopping trees, you get it for skinning animals, so that all gives you extra XP. You also get it for crafting, so if you craft anything out of the materials, you get more XP. You also get it for handing in those materials for town quests. Ideally, you want to hand in crafted materials for town quests, because then you get XP for crafting them first, and then you get XP for handing them in as well. And of course, on top of all of that, you also still get the XP for the quests that you did in that area, and you progress with the story. Notice how you're not leaving any fun along the way here. You're experiencing the quest lines, the stories of the game. You're experiencing the PvE combat and potentially the PvP as well. You're experiencing the more relaxing gathering experience, and you experience the satisfaction of having efficient XP returns every time you make it back to town. And you're doing all of this without min-maxing very much. Now, when it comes to the crafting leveling that results from that, I think often you don't even need to do the most efficient crafting. Often you'll find things that you simply want to craft because you need them or you want to sell them, and often you just end up crafting things because you happen to have a lot of resources for them specifically. So while there is always an optimal way in terms of material usage and XP, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's the optimal way for you. You may have ended up in an area with a lot of hemp and you want to craft something out of fiber which is easier for you, or you may be in an area with a lot of iron and then you can actually craft more of those things. So depending on that, what is most efficient to craft for you time-wise, actually mostly depends on what's already in your pocket. But let's look a little bit more at gearing and leveling. One of the things I would definitely recommend doing is going into the dungeons, or expeditions as they're called. Not only do they give you a bunch of XP, and some are even required for the main quest, but they also provide you with a lot of extra gear, and often it's very valuable gear for the level that you're on. And that can obviously improve your leveling experience in the long run and also enhance your PvP experience. I would recommend doing each dungeon for the main quest at least once, ideally while having some other faction quests or other quests surrounding it that are for the same dungeon, if you're lucky. If you find a decent group and you have some extra keys, I would recommend doing them multiple times, because they have repeatable quests as well for extra XP. I need to go into a little bit more detail on this particular aspect so that you can actually get keys for all the dungeons. There is a dungeon for every 10th level starting from level 25. So 25, 35, 45 and so on. Generally, I would recommend doing the dungeons on the recommended levels unless you have a very good group. If you do it much below that, it might just slow you down too much and then it's no longer really efficient or anything. If someone else has a key called Tuning Orb, you can access the dungeon with them, but there are quest lines that guide you to your own keys. And this is where I have to give you a tiny bit of extra information for you to stay efficient. In order to get the keys, you need to do quests in specific areas. For the first dungeon, you actually just need to follow the main quest, and the dungeon is in Windsward for level 25. The second dungeon is in Everfall, and to get a key for that one, you need to do the first batch of quests in Everfall. So this is something worth keeping in mind if you want to do the level 35 dungeon. You can also get a repeatable quest for it from the front of the first dungeon. The third dungeon is in Restless Shore for level 45, and you'll get the key through the main quest once again. The fourth dungeon is in Evanscale Reach, so you want to quest in that area, and it unlocks at level 55. Currently there are also 2 level 60 dungeons. To access those you have to do quests in Reorder and Eating Room. So while you don't need to massively min-max to access these dungeons, you want to quest in these particular areas in order to unlock the keys if you're interested in that. What's worth noting with the dungeons is that around the same levels you also get quests for higher level faction ranks. So if you have gathered sufficient faction tokens, gathered sufficient faction reputation, then you will get these quests that allow you to unlock higher level gear. These automatically show up in your quest log, and I highly recommend completing them because that gear is very strong on those levels. Now, I would generally recommend grabbing some faction gear whenever you get close to faction token cap. It's just really good gear. Even if you out-level it a slight bit, it'll still be very good, and it can kind of upgrade the parts where you're not getting good drops. But I would recommend doing the dungeon runs for your corresponding level before you buy any faction gear. On level 25, I bought a full set of faction gear, and while it looks cool, it doesn't provide any additional benefits to have a full set. Then I went into the first dungeon and very quickly found at least some gear that outclassed my faction gear, some parts of it, and therefore it was kind of a little bit wasted that I had just bought it. So if you do the dungeon first, then you know what you got and you know which parts you're going to upgrade with faction tokens. But wait, there are even more ways to level efficiently. If you look at any of the New World maps that you can find online, I'm looking at newworld-map.com here, you can see certain areas on the map. You can actually hide everything else and just show the mob areas. On New World map, those are classified under points of interest. And if you look at Monarch's Bluff here, you'll see in the very bottom left, there's an area called Lost Area for Group. These are open world PvE areas with elites, and there are a lot of them across the map. If we look up to the top left a little bit, you can actually see another corrupted area here for high level. And these areas are also an excellent farm spot for extra XP and for good gear. Obviously, as the name implies, they are meant for groups, and they might be pretty packed on launch, to be honest, because a lot of people consider that they are the most quick way to level. But I would recommend just stopping by there for a bit and having a look if you can farm in one of those areas, just to get some extra gear, get some extra XP, and change things up in between, so you get the full experience of all aspects. How long you stick around there and how much you want to farm there is completely up to you, but if you ask around in general chat if anyone wants to farm in a particular area, that is something that people will most likely do. And the same thing is true for any corrupted portals that you can close with others in order to get XP and loot rewards. The small portals are very XP efficient, the big ones not quite as much, but on the other hand they provide the resources that you need to craft certain higher level keys later on, so they can still be worth doing and they also drop better loot. On top of all of that, wars are also a great way to get XP and a variety of other resources very quickly. If you have the opportunity to participate in one, it is always going to be worth it, XP and gold wise especially. The same thing is true for invasions, even if you lose, but as of the beta those were locked until level 50, so unless they change that you won't benefit from that until the very late stages of leveling. By doing all of these things a little bit, you're experiencing a vast amount of different types of content that New World has to offer, assuming you combine them effectively, go to locations where you have a lot of quests, and gather along the way. And if there's a particular aspect that you don't enjoy, you can easily skip it this way as well. Now, as I said earlier, there are some potential pitfalls you still want to pay attention to. First, something that I would really recommend doing early is gathering some stone, even if you may not directly have a purpose for it, in order to level your mining. If you find some iron along the way, most definitely pick it up as well. The gathering skill that you want to reach here is 25. On one hand, this is useful because you get the silver for the main quest, but more importantly, a skill of 25 unlocks the ability to track iron veins. Iron is going to be extremely valuable initially, and you can spend a lot of time just farming iron if you want to, but if you have the tracking enabled, you can just find it along the way, and many others will simply not stumble across the same resource spots, because sometimes iron can be pretty hidden, especially in the dark. That is not an issue for you if you can track it, and this can make sure that you still have a sufficient flow of iron most of the time without having to do dedicated farm runs for it. Likewise, I highly recommend leveling your harvesting to 30 in order to be able to gather any magical plants that you find, and this includes some of the plants that you need for the main quest. You definitely want to pick up any herbs you find along the way for quick healing pots, and what you can do after that is either you farm hemp in order to get a lot of fiber, that is what other people recommend. I think fiber is so easy to come by that it may not even be necessary though, and I would actually recommend going to one of the farms. In the early game, you will be sent to a farm with lost enemies, with the zombies. No matter what region you start in, I think they all have farms somewhere. On these farms, you will find a variety of vegetables on the ground. They're easy to overlook because sometimes they just look like they're part of the environment, but they can actually be harvested. The reason I recommend doing this is because the fruits and vegetables you get from that can be used to level your cooking. And you get a ton of light rations early on that way, which is super nice for sustain while leveling. You don't have to worry about it at all, because you can just always snack away on those. It's also nice for PvP, by the way. So if you see a farm early on, just stop by there for a bit and play farmer for a moment, just to gather enough to get to 30 gathering. Especially Monarch's Bluff is an extremely farm-dense area with lots of different resources to gather from the farms. The other gathering skills, excluding fishing, which is more of a money-making profession, kinda solve themselves along the way. And then I have some extra tips to prevent being slowed down. I would recommend always filling your extra bag slots so that you can have the maximum carrying capacity at all times. You can get some bags from quests, but you can also craft some bags that are usually a bit better because they come with extra perks. What you need to do in order to craft those is get a rune of holding from your faction vendor. The rest of the resources are self-explanatory. You can craft that at an outfitting station. I would also highly recommend building your upgraded crafting gear, especially the iron gear, as soon as possible, as that massively speeds up your gathering speed and therefore your overall progression speed. Always use Athos when crafting new gathering tools because it can give you extra benefits, like sometimes getting some Athos back from gathering, which can be very nice for frequent early fast travel. So as you can tell, there are a few things that you may want to pay attention to in order for things to go as smooth as possible. But overall, I think it's relatively easy to level efficiently while still having tons of fun in the game and experiencing the game in the way that the developer intended it to, rather than just brute forcing it and punching down elite mobs for hours and hours and hours. Again, of course, if that is the playstyle you prefer and you just want to rush to 60, no harm done. But I figure that for a lot of people, it's interesting to keep up with the level curve, especially if you don't have that much time to play. And I think that this is a way to do that while still getting to experience all of the game's different aspects. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell to get notified of other upcoming videos. For example, the weapon guides that we're going through this week, as well as some more in-depth mechanics as well. If you have any questions or you just want to chat, don't hesitate to stop by on my Twitch or Discord at any point. The links are both in the description and the pinned comment down below. I'd like to hear from you guys what type of leveling experience you are planning to have. Are you going super hard, super fast? Are you going super slow? Are you just gathering? Are you going with a group? I'm really curious. Tell me in the comments what your way of leveling will be. Mine will most certainly be a mix as described in this very video, along with a lot of PvP, as much as I can get of that. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. Duke Sloth.
You want to hear my game song? Yep. Good job, buddy. Oh, and a troll. And a troll. Who was chasing me for a minute? second one you did? Wow, good job. Is that the best you've ever done so far?
Ahoy! Would you like to heal your allies and support your friends in battle? Then you've come to the right place, because today we're going to introduce you to the Lifestaff's playstyle, how the abilities work, and also give you a build along the way. Let's roll the intro. Notice I didn't say I'm Duke Sloth and I will be your guide? Well, that's because I won't be your guide today. At least not your only guide. Joining me will be the fantastic Micah, whose channel I recently stumbled across, and she is dedicated to healing, I can tell you that much. So I figured an expert like her can introduce you to a lot more in-depth details that I may otherwise overlook. Let's begin with a quick introduction to the Lifestaff. And for that, I hand the metaphorical mic over to Micah.
Alright, so the Lifestaff in New World feels like a very traditional MMO RPG healing weapon. It is a large healing staff that can utilize AoE healing, single target healing, and buffs to support allies and keep everyone safe. The Lifestaff is the only healing weapon currently in New World, which by extension means it is the only weapon that can be efficient in healing. The Lifestaff is also currently the best weapon at keeping a 100% uptime on Fortify, a damage reduction buff, should you choose to go with a buffing playstyle. The Lifestaff is not good at dealing damage, as it only has one damage skill available in its entire kit, so players will heavily rely on their offhand for damage that isn't an auto attack. With that said, players who are likely to really enjoy Lifestaff are people who enjoy healing and supporting other players in their groups, along with perhaps solo players looking to add a bit more self-survivability to their damage kits. For attributes, Lifestaff only scales with focus, and not only that, it is the only weapon in the game thus far that scales with focus to begin with. I would be on the lookout though. New World has some weapons in the works to be released, which should hopefully include a new focus weapon. When adding attribute points towards Lifestaff, I would also add in at least 50 Constitution, as your survivability as a healer is key to ensuring you can keep the rest of your team up.
So, now that you know what the Lifestaff is about, let's have a look at the abilities. Starting with the healing tree. The first ability here is Divine Embrace. This heals your target for 150% of the weapon damage and has a 1 second cast time. It can also be self-casted, so you can self-heal with it. It has a 25 mana cost and a 6 second cooldown, so relatively short, and if you upgrade it with some perks, then it can bounce between multiple targets. The second ability is one that you most definitely notice if you've seen any healer footage before or you have played New World, and that is Sacred Ground. This is a circle AoE heal that lasts for 15 seconds and heals for 20% of the weapon damage every second. So in total it's a 300% weapon damage healing, assuming you stay in the circle the whole time. This ability is instant, it has no cast time. It has a 15 mana cost and a 20 seconds cooldown, but this cooldown ticks down while the ability is active, so effectively it only has a 5 seconds downtime. So on a healer with sufficient mana, you'll see this on the ground most of the time. When investing into additional perks, this can increase all of your healing by 50%, and Micah confirmed to me that this actually includes the healing from Sacred Ground itself as well. You'll see this ability frequently being used both in PvE on the tanks and also in wars on control points. It becomes God tier in wars when stacking it with other healers healing because obviously it just increases everything. The third ability is Splash of Light. Splash of Light is an AoE group heal with a 100 meter radius. It used to be quite popular in wars because it used to heal everyone around you. Now it only heals party members. Thanks to Liquid Blue for giving me the footage for this, by the way. You'll find his Twitch link down below. While AoE, Splash of Light only heals for 50% of the weapon damage. It costs 15 mana and has a 15 seconds cooldown. The ability has no cast time, but it has a brief pre-animation before the heal goes through. With perks, this ability can also remove one debuff from allies. The other tree is the Protected tree. In the Protected tree, the first ability is aptly named Orb of Protection. This is an instant projectile that has a little circle targeter on the ground, and it grants 10% fortify for 20 seconds. It also heals allies, but for 10% weapon damage. On the other hand, it deals 146% weapon damage to enemies. Its mana cost is 16 and the cooldown is 10 seconds. It needs to be aimed at allies, but it's not very hard because the radius is relatively good. The first perk of this ability makes it quite different because it adds a heal over time, which is 7.5% in 10 seconds or 75% weapon damage in total, and also applies the beneficial effects of the ability to yourself, so you get a self heal too. The last perk makes the ability a 3 meter radius AoE that can hit multiple allies. The second ability is Beacon. This is a circle AoE heal that is fired as a projectile and can kinda stick to things. It also deals 146% weapon damage to enemies. It heals allies for 20% every 1 second for 10 seconds, so 200% healing in total. It has a 16 mana cost and 35 second cooldown, relatively long. This can stick to enemies or allies and move around with them, but be careful throwing it on enemies, sometimes it can kinda glitch out and then not heal your allies. And while you cannot stick it to yourself, you can put it on the ground right in front of you and just stand in it to heal yourself. With additional perks, the duration can be increased by 5 seconds for a total of 300% healing. The last ability is Light's Embrace. Light's Embrace heals for 100% of the weapon damage. This ability is instant. It is better for PvP because of this instant cast, but is also very mana heavy. It has 18 mana cost and a 4-second cooldown, so it's very spammable. However, a really cool feature about it is that the healing done by this is increased by 30% for each buff on the target that you're healing. This can lead to massive boosts in late game when you have tons of buffs on you as a tank, for example, or you're in a war where everyone buffs everyone. One of the perks allows you to return 25 stamina to a target when you heal them, which is huge for tanks that rely on the block stamina. The maxed out perk here extends all life staff buff durations by 2 seconds.
When it comes to weapon pairings, the life staff is extremely versatile. With the addition of an ammo gem, you can have your secondary weapon scale on the focus as well. And even though this gem has been nerfed to ensure healers do less damage, it still significantly increases the fluency of your offhand as a life staff user. That being said, weapon pairings I think work very well with life staff and melee are Warhammer for added crowd control, Great Axe for mobility, Sword and Shield for survivability, and Hatchet for mobility and a sunbreak. For long range, Ice Gauntlet has amazing synergy and survivability with life staff, and I felt it stood out the most from the rest of the ranged weapons. Just a disclaimer, this is a work in progress and perks may be changed at launch, so take this guide with a grain of salt. In spending your points for leveling, the first skill I always pick up is Divine Embrace. I don't end up keeping this skill unless I'm spec'd for dungeon mobility, Sword and Shield for survivability, and Hatchet for mobility and a sunbreak. For long range, Ice Gauntlet has amazing synergy and survivability with life staff, and I felt it stood out the most from the rest of the ranged weapons. Just a disclaimer, this is a work in progress and perks may be changed at launch, so take this guide with a grain of salt. In spending your points for leveling, the first skill I always pick up is Divine Embrace. I don't end up keeping this skill unless I'm spec'd for dungeon content, but it is amazing when you first start off as mobs hit hard, and this heals for a very decent amount in early game. For PvP later down the road, you can opt for Light's Embrace instead, which has no cast time if you're looking for an efficient single target heal. Next, I actually take a passive called Absolve instead of my next active skill, as this eliminates all mana usage from your light and heavy attacks, allowing you to put all of your mana into healing instead, making you much more efficient at killing mobs while leveling. Next, I grab Sacred Ground, and I feel as though this is a staple AoE in both PvE and PvP due to its final passive, Blessed, which increases all healing while inside of the AoE of the skill by 50%, which is huge. Next, I go into the Protector tree and grab Orb of Protection. I'll actually keep this skill if I'm solo leveling, but if I'm playing with friends, I'll eventually swap it out for Beacon later down the road, as the double AoE from Beacon and Sacred Ground do massive amounts of healing on allies. I put my next point into Blissful Touch to turn my light attack into a small heal. Then I pick up Revitalize for a cooldown reduction and the first passive of Orb of Protection for a heal over time buff. Now, you can either spend points into getting both passives for Sacred Ground, or you can opt to become a bit tankier, which I would recommend for solo play. If you want to be tankier, I would instead put those 2 points into Bend Light and Protector's Touch, giving you a heal boost and fortify. At this point, you can either opt to keep Orb of Protection or trade it out for Beacon. Since I often play with friends, I love switching to Beacon as it is a very fun skill to use, as it is a large AoE that can attach to enemies and allies. If you stack it with Sacred Ground, you can fully heal someone in a matter of seconds. After swapping to Beacon, I will take the first 2 passives for Sacred Ground, followed by the first 2 passives for Beacon. This increases the radius and the duration of Beacon, which makes it an altogether easier to use skill. The final 2 passives I highly recommend taking afterward are Sacred Protection and Intensify, as they both greatly improve your overall healing output. The rest of your points are up to your preferred playstyle. If you keep Orb of Protection and want to maintain buffs more efficiently, you can pick up Glowing Focus and Protector's Strength, which both increase your buffs. If you're looking to just give an overall good healing output, however, I would pick up Privilege, Cured Struggle, and Divine Blessing. Speed of Light and Balance are the final 2 passives I'll pick up for higher mobility. I hope you guys found this helpful, and huge thanks to Duke Sloth for allowing me to collaborate on this video. If you're looking for more healer-focused content for New World, feel free to check out my channel where I upload everything healer, including guides and reviews. I also stream on Twitch if you want to catch me live. Hope to see you guys in New World.
And I'd like to thank Micah for helping me make this video. In case you haven't noticed, it was actually her playing in the background the whole time as well. I highly recommend checking out her channel if you're interested in more healer info. She goes a lot more in depth there, and obviously it can be updated a little bit quicker than it could be on my channel. You can see a link in the top right now in the description and down below. If you enjoyed this video, you can also consider subscribing and clicking the bell on my channel, of course. I'll be making tons more weapon guides in the next days. Already done the Great Axe and Hatchet. We still have quite a few to go, and I will make sure to cover all of them. Also feel free to hop on my Twitch or Discord if you have any questions. Again, all links down below. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you for the next one soon. Duke Sloth, out.